When a violent thunderstorm rolled across the prehistoric landscape thousands of years ago, modern instincts suggest ancient humans would have been terrified, hyper-alert, and completely unable to sleep. Yet evolutionary evidence shows that heavy rain and rolling thunder actually triggered some of the deepest, most restorative sleep our ancestors ever experienced.
The intense sensory chaos of a wild storm did not keep early humans awake. It gave them the safest night of rest they would get all month. And the biological reason why still controls your brain every time you hear rain falling on your roof tonight. When you picture an early hunter-gatherer curled up inside a dark rock shelter, it is easy to assume a storm brought pure misery.
Water dripping from cold stone, freezing wind howling through the trees, and sudden flashes of blinding light sound like the ultimate recipe for sleepless insomnia. But if you take a close look at how the human brain evolved alongside nature, a completely different picture starts to emerge. Every night in the wild was a life or death gamble.
Saber-toothed cats, hyenas, and rival groups stalked the darkness, relying on precise hearing and sharp smell to hunt down sleeping prey. In total silence, a single snapping twig or a rustling leaf meant an apex predator was moving closer to the camp. So how could anyone relax enough to drop into deep slumber when total silence meant extreme danger?
This brings us to the first massive twist in the story of prehistoric sleep. We tend to think of storms as destructive disruptions that broke the peace of the ancient world. But for a band of early humans sleeping in a crude shelter, a thunderstorm was not a threat. It was the ultimate natural cloaking device.
When torrential rain hits the canopy of a forest, it creates a massive wall of acoustic noise. High-frequency sounds like splashing water and lower-frequency rumbles fill every corner of the environment. This sound wall effectively blinded the hearing of large predators who relied on quiet stalking to find food. A big cat could no longer hear the breathing or subtle movements of a sleeping family inside a cave. At the exact same time, the sudden deluge washed away human scent trails across miles of terrain. Predators that tracked prey by scent were suddenly left blind in the dark, unable to follow a trail through soggy earth and rain-drenched leaves. The storm had effectively wiped the slate clean.
Imagine standing in the middle of a dense jungle while a warm downpour drenches everything around you. The air smells rich with damp earth, and the deafening roar of water hits the leaves like a million tiny drums. For a hunter who spent all day scanning the horizon with tight muscles and high adrenaline, that roar meant one incredible thing. Nothing is hunting me right now.
Does that sound counterintuitive? Think about how your own nervous system reacts when you step into a loud, busy coffee shop versus sitting in a pitch-black room where every tiny creak makes your heart race. Silence forces the brain to turn up its internal gain, listening hard for threat cues. Massive ambient noise allows the brain to finally dial back its sensitivity. This survival advantage created a powerful biological loop across thousands of generations. Humans who felt calm and sleepy during rainfall were more likely to rest deeply, conserve energy, and wake up refreshed for the hunt. Humans who stayed hypervigilant during every shower burned out their nervous systems with constant stress.
Over time, nature selected for brains that equated the sound of heavy rain with complete physical safety. That acoustic wall is what scientists today call mask noise. But rain does something even more profound to the physical environment. Have you ever noticed that sudden heavy rain drops the air temperature and clears away dust in seconds?
For early humans sleeping near smoky fires or in dusty shelters, rain brought an instant upgrade to air quality. The damp air settled fine particles, making it easier to breathe deeply without coughing or clearing the throat. Deeper breathing directly stimulates the vagus nerve, which drops your heart rate and signals the body to prepare for deep rest. When you lie down after hours of physical labor, your core body temperature needs to drop slightly before your brain can initiate sleep. A sudden rainstorm dropping the ambient heat served as a natural biological trigger, telling the body that night had officially arrived and it was time to shut down energy consumption. What about thunder, though? A sudden loud boom seems like it should instantly jumpstart your fight or flight response every single time. This brings us to our second big twist. You would assume that thunderclaps would constantly startle ancient humans out of their sleep cycle, leaving them exhausted. But neuroscience reveals that the human brain processes environmental thunder in a completely unique way compared to other sudden sounds. The human ear evolved to be exceptionally sensitive to high-pitched, sharp sounds like screaming, snapping branches, or growls. These sounds carry urgent information about immediate physical danger nearby. Thunder, on the other hand, consists mostly of very low-frequency acoustic waves that rumble through the ground and air over long distances. When a low-frequency rumble passes over a sleeping human, the brain registers it as distant background activity rather than an immediate point-blank threat. Unless the strike is directly on top of the shelter, the low frequencies do not trigger the same surge of adrenaline as a sharp, high-pitched crack. In fact, low-frequency rumbles actually encourage slow-wave brain activity. Slow-wave sleep, often called deep sleep, is the stage where your brain repairs muscle tissue, clears out metabolic waste, and consolidates memories. Laboratory studies testing low-frequency audio stimulation show that brain waves naturally try to synchronize with steady, low rumbles. The thunder was not waking our ancestors up. It was literally pacing their brainwaves into deeper states of slow-wave sleep. There is another invisible force at play during a storm that directly changes your blood chemistry: atmospheric barometric pressure. Before a storm arrives, barometric pressure drops sharply, changing the density of the air around us. Have you ever felt a heavy, cozy weight settle over your body right before a major storm rolls in? That is not just in your head. When barometric pressure drops, your body experiences a slight drop in blood pressure, which natural body systems interpret as a signal to slow down and rest. For ancient humans who lived outdoors 24 hours a day, this drop in pressure acted like a natural sedative. It signaled that severe weather was approaching hours before the first raindrop even fell, giving the group time to gather under cover, pull their animal hides closer, and prepare for rest.
By the time the rain actually started pouring down, their bodies were already preconditioned to drift off. They were not fighting against the storm. Their internal chemistry was completely aligned with the weather pattern happening outside. Now picture where they were actually sleeping during these massive downpours.
The popular image of cavemen shows people sitting deep inside damp, freezing stone caverns, shivering on cold dirt floors, while water pours through the ceiling. Real archaeological digs tell a vastly different story about prehistoric living spaces. Ancient humans were brilliant natural engineers who understood thermal dynamics better than most people do today. They rarely slept deep inside dark, airless caves where moisture accumulated and toxic fire smoke got trapped. Instead, they chose overhangs, known as rock shelters, where a high stone cliff angled outwards to block incoming rain while allowing fresh air to circulate freely. Inside these rock shelters, early humans constructed elevated sleeping platforms made from layered materials. The bottom layer consisted of dry ash from old fires, which acted as an incredible natural insulator against the cold, damp ground while repelling crawling insects. On top of the ash layer, they stacked springy branches, aromatic herbs, and thick animal pelts. The result was an elevated bed that kept their bodies inches off the wet dirt while trapping warm air underneath them. When rain lashed against the outside of the rock shelter, the angled ceiling directed the water away from the sleeping zone, creating a dry microclimate just feet away from the roaring storm. Sitting inside a dry pocket of space while watching water pour down right in front of you creates a powerful sense of shelter security. Fire was another crucial piece of this ancient sleep system. You might wonder how they kept a fire burning when a wild storm brought sweeping winds and torrential moisture. If a storm put out their fire, they would lose their primary source of warmth and light, leaving them exposed to the freeze. But ancient hunters mastered the art of fire placement using natural air currents. This leads directly into our third major twist. You might think rain and wind were the ultimate enemies of keeping an ancient fire alive inside a shelter. But early humans actually used the incoming storm winds to create natural heat reflection systems that made their sleeping fires burn cleaner and hotter. By placing their hearth near the opening of a rock shelter and stacking a wall of wet logs or thick stones directly behind it, they created an acoustic and thermal reflector. The incoming wind from the storm was forced upward by the stone wall, pulling smoke up and out of the shelter, while bouncing pure, radiant heat back onto the sleeping area.
The wet logs on the back wall did not catch fire easily, meaning the fire burnt slowly and steadily throughout the night, without requiring constant refueling. The soft, rhythmic flicker of orange light bounced off the stone ceiling, providing a visual focal point that reduced visual anxiety in the dark. Watching a glowing hearth fire while rain creates a curtain of water just beyond the entrance generates an incredible psychological state known as thermal contrast. When your skin feels cozy warmth while your senses register coldness right outside, your brain releases high levels of oxytocin and endorphins.
If you enjoy digging into how ancient human biology still shapes your daily life, subscribing to the channel is a great way to catch all our upcoming deep dives into human history. This thermal contrast turned what could have been a miserable night into a luxurious sensory experience for an ancient group. Warmth inside, cold outside, dry bed underneath, acoustic shield overhead. Everything aligned to make storm nights the ultimate sleep sanctuary. There is another fascinating biological trigger that happens the second rain hits dry ground: the smell of petrichor. We all know that distinct, earthy scent that fills the air right as a thunderstorm begins. Petrichor is created when organic compounds released by soil bacteria, called actinomycetes, combine with plant oils and get kicked up into the air by falling raindrops. For millions of years, this specific scent carried a clear message to early hominids. Fresh water has arrived, plant life will flourish, and animals will gather to drink. The scent of petrichor directly stimulated the olfactory bulb in the ancient brain, which connects straight to the limbic system, the seat of emotion and memory. Long before humans had words to describe it, the smell of rain triggered a deep neurochemical surge of relief and safety. When fresh water was abundant, survival became drastically easier. The mental strain of searching for water vanished instantly, allowing the brain to drop its baseline stress levels and relax into deep sleep. Even the visual environment during the storm contributed to better rest. Bright sunny days demanded constant visual scanning for predators, food, and environmental hazards. A dark, rain-covered landscape compressed the visual horizon down to just a few feet. Ancient humans could not see far into the distance, but neither could anything else. This visual compression meant there was no point in staying awake to keep watch over miles of open territory. Since visual tracking became useless in the dark downpour, the brain naturally turned its focus inward. The eyes could rest, the muscles could unclog from tension, and the nervous system could shift from external vigilance to internal recovery. Now let us tackle a common question. How did they handle sleep when the band consisted of infants, elderly members, and active hunters all crowded together under one stone ledge? Did everyone just drop off to sleep at the exact same moment and hope for the best until morning arrived? That brings us to our fourth surprising twist. It seems logical that a tribe would all sleep together in one big synchronized shift while a storm raged outside. However, human sleep architecture actually evolved to be naturally unsynchronized, creating a rotating protective system called Sentinel sleep. In any natural human group, sleep timing varies dramatically depending on age and biological role. Teenagers and young adults are naturally hardwired as night owls, staying alert late into the evening. Older adults tend to be early risers, waking up long before dawn. During a storm, this natural age spread meant that someone was almost always in a light stage of sleep or fully awake, even without setting formal guard shifts. When the young adults were still awake late at night, the older members were already deep in slow wave sleep. By the time the older members drifted into light morning sleep, the youth were finally entering their deepest rest. This staggered sleep schedule meant the group was never completely defenseless. If the storm suddenly shifted, or if a rock slide occurred, or if a fire needed tending, the individual currently in light sleep would immediately notice and react. Light sleep is not a failed attempt at deep sleep. It is a vital evolutionary adaptation designed for environmental monitoring. During light sleep, the brain continues to process environmental sounds, filtering out harmless rhythmic noise like rain, while remaining hypersensitive to unusual sounds like a breaking stone or an unfamiliar call.
Because the storm provided a steady background white noise, It actually made Sentinel sleep far more effective. The night watcher did not have to suffer through exhausting quiet, where every tiny breeze caused a false alarm. The steady rhythm of falling rain filtered out low-level background noise, allowing the watcher to stay calm while listening specifically for sharp anomalies that breached the sound barrier. Have you ever wondered why children often sleep right through massive thunderstorms, while adults wake up at every loud crack? That difference is rooted directly in this ancient survival setup.
Young children in prehistoric times needed deep, uninterrupted sleep for brain growth and physical development. They relied entirely on the older members of the group for protection. Their brains were programmed to tune out environmental noise completely once they felt the physical presence of their caregivers. Adults, on the other hand, maintained micro-arousals throughout the night.
A micro-arousal is a brief shift from deep sleep to light sleep that lasts only a few seconds, often without the person even remembering it the next morning. During a storm, an adult human might experience dozens of these micro-arousals. They would subconsciously check their surroundings. Is the shelter still dry? Is the fire still burning? Are my children close to my body? Is the rain still falling? If all parameters matched safety cues, the brain immediately dipped back into deep sleep without fully waking the conscious mind. This seamless rhythm of checking and sleeping allowed ancient humans to maintain security without suffering from sleep deprivation. Physical contact played an enormous role in this process.
Prehistoric groups did not sleep in separate rooms or on individual mattresses. They slept huddled tightly together in a shared pile of bodies and pelts. Huddling together during a cold storm served a double purpose. First, it drastically reduced thermal loss, allowing the group to stay warm even when ambient temperatures plunged. Second, it provided continuous physical feedback that everyone was safe. If one person startled or shifted rapidly, the physical vibration instantly rippled through the rest of the group. You did not need to see or hear a threat. If the person next to you remained calm and still, your nervous system automatically assumed everything was fine.
This shared physical feedback loop created a powerful collective calm. As long as the group body remained still, individual stress hormones remained low, allowing deep, restorative sleep to cycle naturally through the night. What happened when a storm was so intense that it actually flooded part of the shelter or threatened to bring down loose rocks?
Ancient humans were master observers of animal behavior. Long before a storm reached dangerous levels, wild animals would seek refuge in specific geographical zones that were safe from flash floods and mudslides. By watching where deer, bears, and birds hunkered down, early humans learned which rock formations stood firm against the worst weather. They did not just pick any random overhang. They selected sites that had survived hundreds of years of seasonal downpours. This deep environmental knowledge eliminated the panic that modern people often feel during severe weather. They knew the shelter would hold because it had held through countless storms before. Confidence in their environment was the ultimate prerequisite for deep sleep. Consider how different that experience was compared to modern life. Today, we live in sealed boxes with artificial heating, completely disconnected from the natural weather cycles outside. When a storm hits a modern home, we hear strange creaks in the roof, power lines humming, and wind rattling glass windows. Because we are isolated from nature, these artificial sounds can feel threatening and unpredictable, keeping our stress hormones elevated. For an ancient human, a storm was not an unnatural event disturbing a quiet room. It was a fundamental beat in the grand rhythm of the living world. They understood every sound, every smell, and every temperature shift with absolute clarity. This deep familiarity transformed what seems like a terrifying environmental hazard into a predictable, safe period of mandatory rest. When the storm raged, hunting was impossible, gathering was paused, and traveling was off the table. The storm enforced a temporary truce with the working world. It was one of the few times ancient humans were completely excused from the exhausting daily hustle for survival. With no chores to perform and no predators on the prowl, the group could dedicate 10 or 12 continuous hours to pure, uninterrupted rest.
They used these long, rainy stretches not just for sleeping, but for social bonding, storytelling in hushed tones, and grooming each other near the warmth of the fire. The soft murmur of human voices mixing with the sound of rain created an incredible sense of community intimacy. Grooming releases high levels of serotonin and dopamine, lowering heart rates and strengthening social bonds.
By the time the group settled down to sleep, their nervous systems were bathed in calming neurochemicals. The combination of social safety, acoustic masking, thermal warmth, and barometric pressure created the absolute peak conditions for human sleep performance. This brings us to our fifth and final major twist.
We tend to think of our modern love for rain sound apps, thunder tracks, and cozy stormy nights as a quirky psychological preference or a fun trend. But science proves that your urge to curl up with a blanket when it rains is actually an ancient, hard-coded survival reflex passed down unbroken over 2 million years. Your brain is not enjoying a pleasant sound effect. It is recognizing an ancient evolutionary green light that says the world outside is temporarily paused. Predators are blind, fresh water is coming, and you are finally safe to sleep. When you play a rain track on your phone tonight to help you fall asleep, you are tapping straight into the exact same neural pathway that kept your ancestors alive and well-rested in stone shelters during the Ice Age. The human brain has changed very little since those early days under the cliffs.
We still crave the acoustic camouflage of falling water, the thermal contrast of a warm bed in a cool room, and the comforting knowledge that the storm outside is keeping the rest of the world at bay. The next time a massive thunderstorm rolls over your home, flashing light across your bedroom ceiling and shaking the window panes with deep rumbles, do not think of it as a disturbance.
Step back for a second and listen to the steady cadence of the downpour hitting the roof above you. Feel the drop in air pressure settling heavy over your limbs, and notice how quiet the streets become as the rest of the world retreats under cover. You are experiencing the exact same natural shield that protected early humanity through millions of dark, dangerous nights on the wild earth. Do you fall into a deeper sleep when there is a loud storm raging outside your window, or does the noise keep you tossing and turning all night?